cells. But in my work, I'm limited by my landscape. My landscape is small. So I had only 57 cells. So I knew that if I was going to submit that to a journal, they were going to say that you have too few cells, please go put it somewhere else. But what you have to do is, you have to anticipate that this problem will come up, because it's obvious. So what I did is, I brought in an entire paragraph over there which said that typically estimates are derived from larger sample sizes, but what we did is, to find out if sample size adequacy was good or not, we did have some simulations, and then that showed up over there as, yeah, decent enough. And then in my results I show that this error is only 4%. Okay? So this makes it sound so clear that you know what you're doing. Frankly, you might have thought of it much later, but don't bother. Make it sound like as though you thought of it from the very beginning, put it in place, and now that plugs a hole in a review question. Otherwise, unnecessarily someone will come back with a review question, your process will get delayed, and things like that. So this basically just does the job of reducing the time. And yes, what this makes you do is it makes you sound really smart.
But what if the sample size or the spatial extent is really low? I mean.
So yeah, so this is a remedy for those which can be fixed. There are remedies which you will have to do something which can't be fixed. So yeah, that does become difficult. In fact, there's a very interesting thing that most people have started doing now. What people do is if they have to put their story somehow, then they make it a meta-analysis. So you put your data point and then pull together all kinds of papers that have done, say, bird relationships with disturbance, for example, and then say that the overall trend is this. So that completely absolves you of your sample size problem, because the sample size required for the meta-analysis is how many journals or how many papers you managed to pull out. So it's all about disguising it. Of course, you can be slimy and disguise it the way you want. But the thing is, yeah, you have to be truthful to some extent, and yeah, it again depends on how you want to.
Another way is simulations.
Yeah, simulations.
Yeah. Even if you are able to do some simulations, if you don't have the data, and but you're clever enough to work out some simulation which shows the trend, and then you can show that your data kind of fits into that range of the simulated data. That's also a way of doing it.
So you just have to get a little smart about it. And the best way to do is keep searching papers. Someone has already cracked it, so don't bother. You'll find it. You'll find a solution for yourself. So it's not going to be that difficult. Yeah? So again, with results, say everything that you said in the methods, but put it in terms of the results that you've got. Summarize it with the necessary text, tables, and figures. And of course, yeah, I'm not going to take too much time. And the other very important thing, both when it comes to the methods and the results, only talk about the methods that matter in your results. Okay? Maybe you went out and did point count for birds, but never used the point count data for the final analysis. So chuck it. Don't even say that you did it. Just leave it. Because for your paper, that doesn't matter. What matters is just the vegetation structure, for example. You just want to talk about that. For example, maybe you have looked at, in her case.
Like in master's data, I went out with a distance sampling approach. Okay, I did point counts variable with point counts. I took distances for every bird that I encountered. Finally, the distance analysis just didn't work out at all. And my reviewer pointed out that it's not working. Why don't you just, get an effective strip width and get relative densities? I just had to show differences. So I didn't need absolute densities. I could just work with relative differences in abundances, densities, and talk about how it changed over time. So I jumped the distance analysis. So even in my methods, I made it into fixed radius point count. So you don't have to talk about things that
you have to be flexible about a few of those things. Right? And then of course discussions and conclusions, it's standard. But in the first paragraph, when you talk about what you've done, it's always nice to open with a bang again, because this is the place where you're telling everyone what you did and how important it is. Don't start with literature survey again. It's not an introduction exercise. It's trying to discuss what your work is. So, for example, in let's say that in one of the
first paragraph is basically a summary of your key results.
Something like your message. Okay.
An expanded
Just
form of
say
main message.
Just say that.
In this study, I went and did this.
And I
this is
figured
what
out
I
this.
found. So
Our study clearly shows that this happens when something else happens. Start with that so that it catches your reader again. Because frankly speaking, even when you read a paper, I don't know how people read, because each person has a different way of reading a paper. But very often what happens to me is, if I'm not interested in what they did, what I'm interested in just the main message, then I read the introduction, I kind of skip through the methods and results because all I want to look at is the graph to see if it makes sense to me, and then I go into how they discussed it. So you have to engage the reader maximum in the introduction and in the discussion. Methods, most of us skip through. Unless we need the method for our own work, we are not going to read it, right? So just think of it like that, and make sure that your discussion also is a starting, sentence is like a, selling point again. Yeah? Yeah. Then of course these are all standard things. And this is a very important thing to bring in. Describe the limitations of your work. Even if it's a small limitation somewhere, make sure that you have one teeny paragraph of at least 4 sentences or 2 sentences that says that, yeah, all of this what I'm saying is fine, but there is a small problem, and I acknowledge that there's a problem. Because it's better to acknowledge it somewhere than to say that no, nothing exists, actually there's no problem at all. Because then review comments will come, and you'll have to do it some way or the other. So it's always better to say from the beginning that either you have a sample size problem, or you have a spatial extent problem, or something like that. Make it a part of your story. And that just basically strengthens your case. It makes someone realize that yes, you know what you've done, you're clear about what all is there, and what you're trying to say is despite those problems. So that's perfectly alright. Yeah. And then of course references. I think most of us are already using some softwares for referencing. There's EndNote and RefMan, both of them which are paid. If someone has cracked versions, very good. Please exploit them. The others are Mendeley and Zotero. If those who have not yet started using reference managers, these are two freely available reference managers. Both of them are very, very easy to use, and yeah, I would encourage you to start using them. I'm sure everyone's using? Hands? Yes? Yeah, okay. For those of you who are not using, just learn it, it's very easy, and frankly Mendeley is very, very nice. You also get a Facebook-like page for yourself, so you can also be on a Mendeley. Okay, but basically the thing is, it's an easy job. And whichever journal you want, you just have to download the style for that journal, plug it into it, and then they can now all of these can work with Word and stuff. Right? So it's not a problem. And then of course the most important thing is to make sure that your tables and figures are formatted properly. Okay? And of course the formats differ from journal to journal and the way they are represented, but very, very important thing is if you don't get your format right, it kind of leaves, kind of impression with the reviewers that you're not taking your job seriously. Okay? And frankly, either your text or your figures, formatting is extremely crucial. And I know it's pretty stupid that every time you submit a journal, you have to rewrite the whole format. It's like a boring exercise. Very often it's just pointless. But no, it doesn't. But in many ways, it's important to make sure that your format is very, very clean, right? Because that's, that kind of shows your seriousness for submitting it into a certain journal and pursuing it at that particular journal. Okay. For example, I'll give you one example. So I had a figure, and this is what I put in the first version of my manuscript with clause 1. So I kind of tried to explain what the landscape is and the grids, and showed the cities in the area and the main corridor, which is my issue in my paper. Okay. I had one figure like this, and because I felt that I was crowding this already. Don't you think it's crowded already? Or do you think it's still enough space to write something? Okay, fine. So then I had a second figure, which was this, which again is the same landscape, but I didn't have the grids, I didn't have the cities, I didn't have the corridor, but I pointed out all the forest divisions on it. Okay? And I wanted both of them because my discussion deals with these divisions, and my my study deals with this design. So I was asked to compress it in some way. And so it's a very important thing because at the end of it again it's white space, the amount of space that you're taking up. So then what I ended up doing is put the two together. Okay? So basically what matters is you trying to compress as much as information as you have into a single figure so that you don't lose out what you want to say also. For example, one of the mistakes that I made, and don't do unnecessary things. One of the mistakes that I made with this, nowhere in my study do I have any use for open forest, moderately dense and very dense forest. Doesn't make sense in my paper at all. I just need forest cover. But it looks more fancy if I put the 3 shadings, it looks more like a forest. Okay, so I did that. But then after one of the questions that came is, so do you mean that open forest is not good for tiger, and do you mean dense forest is good for tiger? Well, that was the question that came. So then I realized that how stupid that that figure was. So then I stuck to this, where it didn't matter what I did. It was all forest. Yeah, so I brought that down to forest. I had surveyed cells. Unfortunately, the colors are not showing up, but there are some colors. Trust me. The survey cells are black, and then the PAs are in red. Okay, so I was able to enough detail, and then I managed to put the division numbers, and I put that there. And I also actually brought in another thing, which I didn't explain in my first figure. I didn't bring in this tiger habitat block 1 and block 2. I managed to even squeeze that in, and then with the corridor in it, I put everything in. So the thing is, if you really plan your figure out very well, you can actually put lots of information into it without losing the main essence and also not crowding it too much. Of course, if you have too much to say beyond this and it's not happening, then please push it to an appendix or something like that. It'll be perfectly alright. Yeah? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, do we have some laptops? So I'm going to
So do you repeat that stuff in the study section again? Or can you just refer to the figure and
in my thing, I only refer to the figure. I didn't say anything else. So my study description said that there were so many forest divisions in the west and so many forest divisions in the second. And then I just say figure this. So the list of divisions are given there and everything else is given. So I don't have to rewrite the division names in the thing. In fact, actually that helped a lot. Because I managed to get done with it, I saved so much more text space into putting it away. So anyone has questions? I'm so sorry I've been rattling on. Any questions in making figures, in dealing with introductions, methods, results, problems that you faced? Because for me also it's been a complete learning experience. So what all I've encountered are like, from my own hundreds of rejections. So it's only, it's rejections that teach you more than acceptance. So, so. Okay, so there's an Excel file. I don't know
It's
already.
on the manuscript writing Ferris page.
It's on the Ferris page. If you've not got it, I have it here. You can just pass it around and then put it up. Anyone?
I think all of us have.
You guys have taken it down? You don't have it? There's an Excel. So what I'm going to do is, there are 2 tables, right? There are 2 tables here, right? I'll just quickly explain the 2 tables. One of which is the probability of detecting tiger signs, okay? And there are 3 substratives. There's a train, there's a road, there's a route, okay? The river beds basically. There are 2 habitats, habitat 1, habitat 2, and the associated standard errors. So SE1, SE2, okay. What I've written here is actually this one will go to habitat 1 and this second one will go to habitat 2, okay? So it's one after the other. Is that alright? So what I want you to do is, some of you take this one, some of you take this one. Let's just make a graph and let's make the legend for it, okay? And what I want you to choose is whichever method of graph making. You can use a bar graph, you can use a scatter plot, whichever, But whatever you use, do all the format, and then maybe we can just view the graphs that you guys have made and see which is better than the other. Is that alright? Okay, so who's going to do one and who's going to do two? And you guys just decide. Just make sure that whoever is sitting next to each other does two different things. So it will ensure that we've done. Okay, I'll just explain the second graph. The second table is encounter rate of tiger snares and ungulate snares. Okay, and this has multiple years data. This has 11 years of data, 2000 to 2010. It has effort, which is the number of walks that were conducted in that particular year in some place, and the number of tiger snares that were recovered per 5 kilometers. Okay, it's just some big values. So in every 5 kilometers, this is the rate at which tiger snares were found, and for every 5 kilometers, this was the rate at which ungulate snares were found. Okay, so that's my data set. So you can be innovative and make the graph the way you want. I said, should I make one graph? Other than make another graph. And also another tip, most journals don't like to take color, right? Because color print is expensive. So just think of it as a black and white. And that's why I've purposely given it as a simple black and white possibility. But yeah.